Okay, I think the microphone's working, so hopefully... Ta-da! How's it going, guys? Agus here from Maker's Muse. Wow, it's been a year since I've done a stream on this channel, and I think it's working. Every time I do something, something's changed. So the latest change is Streamlabs is in heaps of hot water because of various things they've done, and now they're having to rebrand their software to Streamlabs Studio instead of Streamlabs OBS. Reinstalled things, got it working. I think it's all going. It is fantastic to catch up with you all again for this ridiculous number. Yeah, I just thought 888 is like, in terms of like a subscriber number, it's just so much fun and also just ridiculously huge. And I can't quite get my head around it because I just make silly 3D printing projects on the internet. But I just absolutely love hanging out with you guys. So, cheers. I am very pink. It's the... oh, wow. It's the camera's auto skin... white balance doesn't like that background, does it? Oh, dear. Let's see if I can make myself slightly less pink. White balance, apply, okay. Slightly less pink? I don't know, I'm pretty pink in general. So good to see you all. Shivel, thank you so much for being here. Teresa, the big T, Chris, Axel, Ryan, Neoprint, David. I'm gonna miss so many people. License to Drive, you guys are awesome. I know I recognize all your comments. Carl, so good to see you. I can't believe it. Like, some of you have been subscribed for like 5 years, longer. I don't know where the time's gone. I don't know where 2021's gone. You know, am I right? It's been absolutely bonkers with you know, everything going on. I'm hopeful things are getting back to normal, but I don't think they're ever going to go back to what they were before before the pandemic. But anyway, that's not what this is about. This is about hanging out with you guys, telling you what I've been up to, sharing some things. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can, and discussing what the new year holds. Because yeah, it's December the 3rd in Australia. I don't know where November went. I'll be honest. It just went right past. Teresa, 2021 went down the toilet and clogged it. Yeah, absolutely. 3D Printing Professor, welcome. Thank you so much for jumping in and joining me. You guys are the best. I really, really enjoy this sort of thing. Cool. So, just before we kick off, I actually had some Patreon questions that I asked you guys for questions. And then things happened, and I didn't actually end up making a video about them. So, I'm just going to answer a couple of those, because some of them are really, I think you guys will find it interesting, and I think I really respect my patrons. I had to change some of the terms recently because I just couldn't I couldn't fulfill some of the higher tiers just because of how things are going, and no one seemed to mind, and that's just incredible. So I'm just going to pull it up very quickly here. Okay, maybe should still be able to hear me. Hopefully. I just can't see you anymore. Let's try that. Cool. So I can't answer the really technical ones, but I'll try my best with some of the more sort of general ones. So Kieran was asking, what 2 3D printers made you go, oh my god, in a good way and a bad way? So reviewing 3D printers is really challenging. If any of you saw the recent Kaiwu Tycoon Max review, that was like a good example of what I've had to sort of work through for several reviews in the past. So this is where a company makes a machine that is just constantly evolving. Like, they bring it to the market perhaps a little bit too early, but to be fair to Kaiwu, there's been the chip shortage and part supply shortages and quality control issues just in general because of everything going on. But sometimes machines come to me with such horrific quality control problems that I just don't know where to start. And a long time ago, it was a machine called the TiVo Tarantula. I never made a review on that properly. I started to try, but it had so many problems. If you get into 3D printing now, you do not know how lucky you are to not have to deal with a TiVo Tarantula. For example, they used rollers, but they used rollers on normal T slots. So it was like a hard edge and then a V slot roller, which meant they wore out very quickly. My particular model came with a non-grounded power supply plug, so you couldn't ground the power supply, and it was just sitting there with exposed high volt mains wiring. All sorts of issues. But Teresa just reminded me of another one in the chat, which was the Hoonie. I did a stupid video ages ago looking at 3D printers with like dumb designs and dumb names, and one was called the Hoonie. It arrived with the wiring done incorrectly. And now there's a garbage truck out the front, so I apologize if you can hear that. The Hoonie's wiring was backwards, so like the limit switch was wired to like the X-axis stepper motor or something, so it couldn't even home, which tells me it was never even tested, which is just ridiculous. But recently, a printer that made me go, oh my god, and actually really refreshed me, gave me like that sort of, I've been doing it for so long that not much surprises me anymore. But recently, the Prusa SL1S, I've been working with resin printers for a long time, but when that started printing, and like those layer change times, it just peels, comes back, peels, come back. It's the first time I've looked at resin and being like, wait, this is not slow. This is actually, it almost makes up for the fact it's messy. It's almost like easy to use now. And I know the SL1S is really expensive. It's super prohibitive if you're just getting into resin printing. But that was really crazy how fast it was. Andrew's questions about really complicated fusion stuff, so I might have to do a video on that. So unfortunately, Andrew, I can't answer that. But Teresa did ask about regular maintenance. So my Ender 3 maintenance video is probably the best resource for what I do to my printers. So I have an original Ender 3, the first off the production line back in when they first came out, like start of 2018 or something. I can't remember. It's still going. And basically for my maintenance, I don't do too much. I try to keep dust off the rollers. It's still using the original rollers. And I make sure it's leveled, and I try to keep the filament out of dusty areas, because I find with long-term maintenance, it's dust that kills printers, because the dust gets to the hot end, clogs the hot end, and then you can't do anything. You need to change your nozzle. I don't print anything ridiculous. I just print regular PLA, so the nozzle hasn't been abraded by ridiculous, highly abrasive materials. But yeah, that's probably my best bet. The belts start to go though. They start to stretch, they start to break apart. So spare set of belts, maybe some rollers if you've been really flushing it, but really it's just keeping the dust off things and keeping things tightened and tensioned. That's probably how I'd go. And I actually have a video coming up soon about Dalian settings, because some of you printed the clearance castle. I'll just go back to the full screen. Some of you guys printed this. A lot of you actually have printed it already, which is awesome. And some of you have found the secret, which is in development. But I'm doing a video companion to this for how to print better print-in-place models. Alright, now I can see the chat again. Eddie, dude, what a champion. Back in the day, we used to do, like, when the channel was really small, I was able to do, like, patron, like, group streams, and I would catch up with Ed in person, and it was just so much fun. Dude, thank you so much for just being here for all the years. I really appreciate it. Your support's just amazing. Oh my god. I forgot I had Streamlabs working. And Chris, thank you so much for jumping in. It looks like that is cut off. I will have to fix that in OBS. But thank you, dude. I really appreciate it. And then Teresa asked, can you give me the recipe for your favorite dessert? I don't really do desserts. I just do, like, cocktails. So, old-fashioned, which would be bourbon, sugar syrup, dash of bitters, swirl it, and then lemon peel on the side. That's what I have for dessert, if I'm able to. Kaiser, show us more bird videos. I am absolutely working on more bird videos. So, people ask all the time how Popeye's going. He comes every day, basically. I don't feed him every day because I don't want him to be, like, solely dependent on me. And we have gone away for weeks at a time sometimes, and he's totally fine. Trust me. He has this knack of looking, like, all pathetic, and I reckon he gets fed by many people in the neighborhood. But since the rubbish bin video, where they figured out how to open that really easily, like, really quickly, I really wanted to test how they do with tool use. So there is some documented cases of birds using tools. Mama the best, thanks man, appreciate it. There's some documented cases of birds using tools, but not so much wild sulfur-crested cockatoos. So the idea was this, where seeds are on a platform, and I'll give them like a bush, chopsticks, things, and hope that they figure out that they can't get in here, so they have to use this to go in and then, you know, push the seeds off, comes down. Yeah, a really intricate design. Of course, the first thing they did is just annihilated it. So you can see they just ripped the plastic apart completely. Now, this is meant to be like a clear pot. I thought it would be strong, but it's terribly weak and brittle, clear plastic. As soon as I started doing that, I bought it, the experiment came out. This wasn't done by Popeye. This was done by another one that was really tenacious. And like I had to push it away with like the branch because it just wouldn't leave. It was just not good. So that's back to the drawing board. But yeah, the birds fascinate me. There's so much interdynamics of their relationships with each other. Each has a different personality, but they are destructive. They're cockatoos. That's what they do. They chew on things. They test things with their beaks, and they have like ridiculously high strength bite force. So it is what it is. Our balcony's looking a bit worse for wear, but whatever. I can replace wood. I don't mind too much. John Hudson, do we have squirrels over here? We do not natively have squirrels. I don't think they've been introduced. I've never seen one here. I saw them when I went to America, obviously. But we have possums. So we have these big fat ones, the brush tails. And then we have these really cute little ones, which are ring-tailed possums. We have all of those around this area. The big fatty ones, they're not like scary like your like I'm just assuming in America. You're in America. Like the American possums look really scary. Our possums, even the big fat ones, look really cute. And they can be quite tame. If you have them in your neighborhood, you leave fruit out for them, they'll come and eat them, and eat the fruit and nibble at it. Really cute. So yeah, we don't have squirrels, but if I did, I'd probably be testing them like Mark Rober does, instead of my birds. T donating some $5. Champion. And 6 cents, thank you so much for the New Zealand $1.99. Hope things are safe over there. A few more of the Patreon questions. So, again, some of them are really technical, and I can't quite easily explain them. But Justin was asking if I have any experience with coating PLA prints with two-part epoxy to add strength to prevent warping. I don't personally have any experience doing that, but I know that Teaching Tech, Michael over at Teaching Tech, has done experiments where he coated parts with bed liner for trucks, and oh my goodness, there it's coming through, and that has prevented them from melting too much in the high temperatures. So yeah, definitely go check out Teaching Tech stuff because it does seem to work. Thanks, Alexi. 8.888888. It's just a fun number. It's just a fun number. And William was asking on Patreon, as a designer and a creator, do I have any preference for either resin printing or FDM printing? Do I see one as inherently superior? And do I see the other becoming dominant or fading out? Really, I get this asked a lot, actually. Like, 3D printing is an umbrella term, and it always has been. FDM was just by far the most popular because it became the most affordable and accessible. Jinx, that is insane. Dude, thank you. You guys don't have to donate. It does massively help though. But yeah, I love doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this so many years later. And yeah, going back to the question, there is no best 3D printing technology. There is so many different types, and they all have their strengths and weaknesses. What we've seen over the last few years is the rise of affordable resin 3D printers, which has really enabled people who do organic modeling, particularly miniatures, to finally adopt this technology. I mean, it's seen such a huge rise that there's channels that are just about it, like just about 3D printing miniatures. That's how popular it is now. That's how long people have wanted this technology. But FDM isn't going to die. It's actually just going to keep evolving. So like Joel, in his recent videos where he went to the conferences and talked to the people with like high flow, high temperature 3D printing, it's still FDM. It's just evolved with higher technology, able to print high temperatures at higher flow rates with the shearing. I didn't really understand as Sentium talking about the shearing properties of plastic flow. I didn't really get it, a bit crazy to me, but the fact that they can print so fast in Ultem, incredible. So yeah, in terms of technologies, it is just what's best suited to what you're trying to do. You never should get a technology and say, I'm going to make this fit my project. You should have a project and an idea and then think, okay, what technology works for that? So it might not even be 3D printing. It might be laser cutting or plasma cutting or CNC machining or making it with a jigsaw because it's so simple, it's quicker to just hack it out by hand. That's usually how I approach these things. And that's why I never called the channel, that's why I never called it like 3D printing makers or Angus 3D printing. It's Maker's Muse. It's about empowering creativity through technology. And that technology could be any technology that empowers your creativity. That's the idea. Blake, dude, thank you. Any more combat robot content on the horizon, please? Oh, yeah. I really do want to get back into it, but with everything that's been happening, none of the events have gone ahead. I was planning to do a little Antweight one, but yeah, I know it's really hard to find the time to build a combat robot from scratch. I forgot when I was a kid just how much free time I had. My robots were terrible, but I had time to make them. But yeah, I really want to get into more of the insect class stuff, which is like the ant weight's 150 grams. You can 3D print the whole thing, like easily. Beetle weight's like 1.36 kilos. You can 3D print most of them, and if you have a good machine, you can print a lot. Any bigger than that, yeah, not so much. Like my Vanguard machine I designed back in 2017, that's got 3D printed gears and stuff, but it's actually really underweight and not really competitive. But still, it was a good proof of concept, and it's pretty much bulletproof. It's built really well. But yeah, there's been no events, so I can't really focus my energies on combat robots if there's no events to use them in. Thanks, Robert. Something small from Switzerland. If Aussies had squirrels, they would be poisonous. Yeah, I agree. There's so much ridiculous animals in Australia. Ironically, I haven't come across too many of the really nasty stuff. I was in WA for a holiday, and so like to get a bit of perspective, that's like a 5-hour flight from New South Wales in the same country. And around Australia, we've got box jellyfish and the irukandji, which is like a tiny box jellyfish, which is really dangerous. Like, kill you instantly kind of thing, unless you get immediate treatment. And I was sort of waiting around up there. These little tiny box like shaped jellyfish were in the water as I was like knee deep in it, and I started to freak out because I was like, they don't look like they should be good. But it turns out there's box jellyfish that are not super deadly. They just sort of sting you a little bit, and there's ones that will kill you. So the ones that were over there were like not the super dangerous ones, but they looked to me like they were. So yeah, it's pretty, you gotta be on your toes when you're in Australia out in the outback. Stephen, thank you so much. Here's to the next 888 subscribers. Yeah, I don't know. The numbers make less and less sense. TV was asking how toxic is printing hips. Oh, okay. Very few people print hips these days. So using PLA Plus now to print more durable cosplay, but I'm considering hips. To my understanding, it's more durable, takes heat better, and paints better. Yeah, a lot of the model guys used to print in hips because they used to make stuff out of hips. And they had processes like the glues and the finishing techniques that worked with hips. I would treat it like ABS. So not super dangerous, but really you don't want to be in the same room when you're printing it. I would say you don't want to be in the same room with printing PLA anyway, because with the PLA Plus at least, you don't know what they're adding to it. But I wouldn't say it's super bad, but you will have warping issues. So hips is similar to ABS in that you want a hot heat bed, so like 100 degrees Celsius, and you want an ambiently heated area, like whether it's the room that's warm or you have a chamber. If you can't do that, it will try to warp and crack as it's printing. I haven't printed it for a long time. I don't remember it being as bad as ABS in terms of warping, but I do remember it needing heat. But yeah, it does work quite well. Another option is PETG, but as you probably know, it doesn't finish very well. So if the part doesn't need finishing, and it's like you want like a translucent look, PETG works great, especially for LEDs. It shines through really well. But yeah, some people in the chat might have another suggestion, but hips was at least used to be used quite heavily by the model makers when I was printing on demand for them. I can't keep up. And this is subscribers only, so you guys are crazy. Parker, thanks so much. I will have a drink for you. This is breakfast juice. Not sponsored. I wish they would I wish they would sponsor me. I had to plug it into here. It's a bit quiet. Let me check my... Unfortunately, the microphone's a little bit far away. I can turn up the gain a bit. I just don't want to clip, that's all. How's that? That's in the yellow, and I do have a brick wall limiter, so hopefully you won't get anything too nasty. that poor rice cooker. Yeah, one of my first videos back in the day was acetone smoothing with a rice cooker. Looking back on it, it was so just loose and dangerous. But we didn't have anything better. When 3D printing was just starting to be accessible to people who didn't have a Stratasys, everyone was trying to print ABS because the Stratasys machines printed what we thought was ABS. Actually, they alloy it with other stuff. But everyone's trying to print ABS. And someone figured out that acetone would melt it, so therefore acetone vapor could smooth the part. So there was this technique, and I don't know who came up with it originally, but you would basically get like a heat source, hopefully without flame, like not without sparks or anything, and you would warm it up and then put acetone in it with the part, and the part would have the acetone like precipitate out onto the surface and then melt it uniformly. It's, in hindsight, hugely dangerous. I used to do it outside, but I had this whole process down because I would make these parts and they had to be smooth because I was selling them to cosplayers, and they needed to be smooth. So I had this whole process of like smoothing them out using acetone vapor with a rice cooker, and I still have that rice cooker. I'm not going to throw it away. I refuse to. But I can't really show that on the channel now responsibly because I know someone's going to do it with like a gas stove or something, and then I'll be at fault when it blows up. YouTube's changed a bit since those early days, unfortunately. Cool, okay, glad the volume's better. Thanks for that. Thanks for letting me know. Shiv will bring back the My Little Pony models with modern printers. I actually started to do that. So one of my older videos is printing from a website called Pony Lumen. And it's like this interactive 3D model site for making your own custom My Little Ponies. And originally I used to actually run a year 7 club for 3D printing. And what I would do is I'd get them to use that, and then they'd use Sculptress, which still exists, but it's like a really easy to use freeform modeling tool. It was free. It was quite good at the time. And they would bring in like these ponies and modify them and add their own stuff. Then I'd print them out. That class was more than half girls. This is like, 14-year-olds who are so cluey into 3D printing and design that they just okay, 3D printing, I get it. Let's do cool stuff with it. But yeah, if I was going to redo the My Little Pony printing tutorial, it would be basically the same, but I wouldn't use Mesh Mixer anymore. I would use 3D Builder, because 3D Builder built into Windows 10 is one of the most powerful mesh repair tools you can get. It's crazy for what it does for free. Yes, it comes with Windows 10, so it's not technically free, but unfortunately Mesh Mixer, since Autodesk took over, they've just gutted all the tools from Mesh Mixer and put them into Fusion 360, and there is no chance Mesh Mixer is getting an update, because why would they update free software with new tools when they can just add it to Fusion 360? Which is really a shame, because I built the backbone of this channel on Mesh Mixer tutorials, and it's still a great program. It's just dead. It's just it's abandoned. It's not being updated anymore. What have I missed? I missed 891's donation. Thanks, dude. Talk about the synths. I will in a minute, I guess. It's a bit of an obsession. There's a lot to talk about that. Thank you very much, though. People want to know about the Prusa XL. It looks awesome, but it looks expensive. So it's sort of like a prosumer thing where I don't know. Like, I know there's a lot of hype around it, but I don't know how much of adoption there will be, because, like, the thing about the i3, the Prusa Mark III, and the S and the S Plus, it's expensive for an i3, but like it works, and it's sort of achievable, like $1,000. Most people can pull that together if they're serious. When you go up to like the SL1S price and the XL price, that's like schools. And like super serious hobbyists, and mostly like businesses. So it will no doubt be really popular in those industries, but the thing about my channel is I really try to keep it accessible. Like, if I can find tools that are cheap, that people can use to do cool things, which is why I subject myself to reviews of like unknown brands from various places for 3D printers, because I just want to find something that's like really good and hopefully share it with people. But when it comes to really expensive printers, you kind of know they're good. Well, you hope they are for the price. And in that case, like, I'm happy to sort of let other people cover them. It's why I haven't reviewed the Form 3. They have offered, absolutely. The company's fantastic. The team here in Australia that resells them, wonderful people. But I just don't know how much value I could give you reviewing that. Because a lot of you couldn't afford it. Because why should you? You can get cheaper resin printers. So yeah, like the XL is really cool in terms of like a technological demo, but I don't know if I'm going to review it. If they say if I'd like to, I probably will say yes because it looks cool, but I'm not crazily hyped, I guess, even though it is a really neat looking machine. I hope that makes sense. Thanks, Josh, for the $10. Love your content. My first 3D printer Viper came in the mail. Because of the video, I was able to set it up, slice a model, and print without any help. Awesome. Awesome. That's really hard. It's really easy to forget if you've been printing for a while. These machines, you've got to know so many little things. You need to learn how to 3D model, or at least how to manage 3D models. You need to put them into a slicer, how to manage the slicer profiles. You need to manage your first layer settings. You need to manage your filament management, make sure it's not tangled. Like, all these little things have to come together perfectly for your first print to work. So that is super cool that you managed to get it going. Because my first prints did not work. I used to have all sorts of problems with filament tangling and the first layer being too close or too far. Because, yeah, it's a learning curve. And thank you, Joseph, for jumping in, if you're still here. And Siddharth is asking, what's my view on Vorons? Again, how do I tackle Vorons? I don't know if I have the time to build one. So I think they're incredible. I think in terms of a design that has been made open, that people can print, and the speeds and quality that people are getting out of them, incredible. I just don't know if I have the time to build one. And also, I don't know if I could add anything more than to all the other people talking about it who have, really shown everything you can about the process and what you can expect from them. I just feel I'd just be adding to like an already really well covered topic. But I personally think if you can build a printer and it performs better than stuff you can buy from the shops, that's a win. That's really cool. I really can respect that. Oversnort, can you talk about how bad spools and windings were in 2013? Yeah, I can indeed. Filament back in 2012, 2013, etc. was so Wild West. So, like eSun, for example, a lot of you guys will know it as like a really popular brand, massive, one of the biggest filament manufacturers out of China. When they started, they were so like hit and miss with their quality. It was just ridiculous. And I remember a post, someone had their nozzle like jam, like completely block, and they didn't know why. And they were printing with eSun filament. They went through and like tore it apart. They found a tiny ruby ball bearing jammed in the nozzle, and then they found them like in the filament. So somehow these tiny ball bearings had found their way into the filament and was just instantly jamming the nozzles, obviously. I don't know how that happened to this day. I've had a roll that was PLA that became ABS, or the other way around, I can't remember. So it was grey, and I was printing it, and then it was welding to the supports and the raft and things. I was printing on the old up printers. And I was like, okay, well, this is really weird filament. And it smelled a bit strange too. So I tried to acetone smooth it, and it went like jelly. Like, ABS will melt completely. PLA might lose some color, but really doesn't generally melt. It might crack apart, but it sort of like went floppy. Like, it was a bit of both. I don't know. I have no idea what to this day what that was. It was just one roll. One roll was that. Then they used to use cardboard spools. So the spools would be really crap cardboard that would splay apart. So the filament, as it was printing, would pull down the side of the other coils and just jam the whole thing. So you wouldn't even tangle it yourself. It would tangle you'd have to re-spool them onto less crap spools. Oh yeah, good times. Cavman was saying, I use 3D Builder for cleaning up and scaling my printable minute figures. I designed for gaming. It's a super handy tool. Yeah, 100%. 3D Builder is really powerful. Absolutely. If you guys don't use it already for scaling, particularly fixing 3D models, it's wonderful. It's really cool. And thank you, by the way, for $10. Printed Nest, thank you for your amazing work. What is your advice to push YouTube channel on the beginning, as we have good ideas, but we're struggling to be visible? Okay. YouTube specific questions. I don't really have a good answer because the landscape's changed completely since I started. When I started the channel because I was kind of frustrated. I was in an industry that was evolving really quickly, and people kept asking the same questions locally that I kept having to redo. And I was doing tutorials in person at that time and training in person. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make a video. I'm going to make a video about this thing. And whether it was like a 3D printer, like at the time it was more like a 3D printer showcase. I wasn't too critical. Like, I'd say pros and cons, but I wasn't like super in depth. But I was using them every day, so I was pretty knowledgeable about the machines I was talking about. So I'd do like a video and then share that video with people who asked, oh, what's the FlashForge Dreamer like? What's the Up Mini like? And be like, well, I made a video about it. Here it is. And then there was the stuff I was doing behind the scenes because I was interested in design and 3D modeling, where I was manipulating software like Mesh Mixer, and there was no tutorials at all on how to do what I was doing. I was learning it from scratch. So I thought, okay, I'll share what I was doing. And then people started commenting and asking for more things, so I started doing it for them. And then one day, the channel got to the point where I was like, okay, well, this is kind of becoming like possibly profitable, but like my first YouTube payment was like $70 after about a year of work. So yeah, don't expect any money anytime soon. But it was definitely a passion project for a long time, and I just shared what I was interested in, and there was other people who were passionate in the same field that enjoyed it. The biggest problem with YouTube now is there's just so much noise on it. It's really hard to break through. But I think if you just have a good niche and you're passionate about what you're doing and you're honest, you will find at least a small niche audience, which can be very valuable. I mean, the early days of Maker's Muse were just a few people. Some of them are in this chat right now. Just was really, really enjoyable. Like, it's not like it's a bad thing. But I won't lie, YouTube is incredibly challenging now. You've got channels with huge content teams behind them, like giant companies basically running channels. And you have to compete with that to get people's attention. And it's really difficult if you're talking about technical stuff, because technical isn't sexy. A review or a tutorial isn't going to go viral. Unless you put like a 3D printed bum in the thumbnail. You guys clicked that video a million times. And I regret nothing. But in general, reviews and tutorials, you're doing it because you're trying to help out a community. And it's more evergreen content that will help people going forwards. Whereas what tends to do well on YouTube now, unfortunately, is the really trendy clickbaity stuff. But I don't think that that's going to last as long. I think it's like a spike and then drops down. So long-term sort of slow growth is how I've always played it. Cool. I think there's a couple more Patreon ones, which I'll probably try to cover, but otherwise, I'm happy to just answer more questions. Share with you what I've been doing. I'll talk about synth in a minute. It's so much to talk about. Okay, well, in terms of the Patreon questions, Witch Wake was asking about wood filament, and I know a lot of you are probably suffering this as well, so it's a good question. They're finding that their black PLA and wood PLA filaments are super stringy, as opposed to other PLAs, and they've tried adjusting retraction distances and temperatures, but still having issues. I have found that wood filaments are notoriously terrible for stringing, and I think it's because they absorb moisture really quickly into the wood fibers. Because if you think about wood filaments, they're not just wood; they're the wood particles, and then they're the binder, like the polymer that they're in. So it's usually just PLA, and they tend to be really stringy. So you can try to dry them, but I found the best way to print wood is to treat it almost like flexibles with your slicing settings. So you want to avoid any crossing of perimeters. So you can turn on settings which try to make the travel moves within the perimeters of the part. And if you're doing that, retraction settings don't matter too much anymore. And temperatures, yeah, I tend to find wood PLA prints at a slightly lower temperature than other PLAs, but your mileage may vary. In terms of black PLA printing badly, even the pigments added to filaments can change their printing temperatures, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, the pigments are technically modifying the filament in a way that you might have to adjust your temperatures to suit. And depending on what they've added, like if it's carbon black or whatever they've used to make it black, that also might make them absorb moisture more than normal. So yeah, in terms of fixing stringy wood filaments, I've never really found a great solution other than trying to keep it super dry. I've found that just treating it like a flexible and making the travel paths inside the part help a lot to cut it down. But yeah, it's a bit, it's always a bit tricky, at least from my experience. And a larger nozzle, 0.4 almost always clogs. So I'd go with 0.5 or 0.6 if you're printing wood-filled filaments. Seppo, thanks so much. Great projects and burbs. Yes, I do love my burbs. I love combining it with my projects. Nathan, thank you so much. Love your content. You've inspired me to build a 3D printing business regarding setting up accessories for RC cars. Awesome. Take care. You too. There's so many little cottage industries of 3D printing now. I'm actually planning to do a video very shortly on an idea, the idea of microfactories. So there's a few different definitions for microfactories, but my definition is the next step above a makerspace. So you think about like a makerspace full of tools, people come in, just make their projects. But the idea of a microfactory would be to take that beyond sort of like a hobby tinkering level into a more monetized direction. You would use these tools and automation to make products in a small scale for the local market. And I really think what we're going to start seeing with this logistics issues that we're facing, which I can't see them getting better anytime soon, is this push for more local small-scale manufacturing for stuff that we use all the time. Like, it's so dumb. In Australia, when the first lockdown happened, we sold out toilet paper because everyone freaked out that they wouldn't be able to get toilet paper. I mean, out of all the things to worry about, we make toilet paper in Australia, locally. We don't bring it in because you think about toilet paper, it's big, bulky, cheap. The logistics makes no sense to ship toilet paper from overseas. It makes no sense. So there's going to be a certain like pain point where it suddenly starts making sense to make other things here because the shipping is now 4-5 times what it used to be, and it takes 4-5 times longer than it used to. And I reckon lots of distributed microfactories will be the way to go for a lot of these products. And I'm not talking about using like super low level 3D printers. For some stuff, sure, you could use like hobby printers, but I'm talking about like, you know, microfactories with a decent, like a Fusion, HP, like Fusion Jet thing, or SLS, or some sort of fairly reliable industrial machine that prints strong consumer ready or industry level parts, in an automated way. So like, you don't have to do anything. It comes in, automates the part layout, prints it, and then you come in and like they're ready to be shipped out locally, like distributed. People can even pick them up. I'm definitely going to do some stuff on that because I have some ideas of like examples of how a microfactory might work. And I think even with the stuff that you guys would have, like low-end printers or even like, you know, mid-level stuff, there's definitely room for this sort of thing moving forwards. The playing field's changed. You know, the mass manufacturing doesn't really have so much of an edge as it used to because logistics is so difficult now. That the financial reasons for not doing it locally kind of fading away. That's my opinion. Okay, cool. Jamie's saying we're looking at microfactory idea for some of their stuff. It's going to become really popular. And you're going to see it as like a buzz, I reckon, for a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to go back to what it used to be, where, you know, stuff was more locally made because that's how you distributed back then. Roberto asking how is Popeye. Again, he comes every day. He's probably going to come while I'm streaming, so if you hear like screeching, it's probably him. Duran, thanks so much for the dono. I started a networking group at work for 3D printing. Do you have any advice on how to get new people to take the plunge and buy a printer? My advice would be to share a printer. If it's a work, have like a community printer where they can take their projects in and try stuff, because it's not for everyone. And expecting people to take the plunge and buy a machine they might not use for several $100 at a minimum isn't really reasonable. Before I bought any printer for myself, I was using a makerspace one. So I used to go to Robots and Dinosaurs, which is a hackerspace, makerspace here in Australia, in Sydney, and they had a really early up 3D printer from Tier Time, and you could pay a membership fee, and then you could pay for the filament you used, and you could print shit. Sorry, I'm live. Australian dialect. And I got a lot of experience from 3D printers from that before I even had my own. So I would recommend having a shared communal sort of thing, and then if people really want their own, they can get one and then they'll be ready to go as soon as it arrives. Versus buying one and then thinking, oh wait, I can't model and I don't have anything I want to print. Why did I buy it? So yeah, communal is the way to go. Fix 'em, dude! Joel's just like standardized that introduction. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. You do some great work too, man. I appreciate it. Caveman, like shapeways but locals only? Yeah, kind of. But also, the idea of a microfactory isn't so much just for printing and not so much printing other people's stuff, but printing batch productions of products that are either your design or you are a contractor for someone else. So, like, a really good example, it's boring. Like, this sort of stuff, it would be boring to talk about, but profitable to do, if that makes sense. So, say you've got a laser cutter, and you're in a local area with a bit of industry, like, let's say mining, or, truck depots and stuff. So, those sort of places need what's called asset tags. So, you have an asset, you need to mark it with a number. But they need to be really strong, because obviously they're out in the open, they're getting abused, and, that sort of thing rained on. So, you can make asset tags with, like, stainless steel. What we used to do is we had a laser cutter, we had asset tags which were cut as blanks and then sent to us, so that can be done slowly. And then we would get the customer to send us through their list of numbers. So they want asset tags 1 to 100 or 100 to 150, or with A in front of the number or B in front of the number, etc. And then you load the laser cutter with these asset tags. You spray them with a special spray that when the laser engraves them, just a cheap laser cutter, nothing special. It actually creates a permanent ceramic black mark where you've engraved it. It's called Surmark. It's really expensive, but you can sell these tags to the local companies on demand, and it's just, you just hit go. Like, it's really easy. That's one example of how a microfactory could be really useful for small scale industries. And it makes no sense to get those shipped from overseas because it would take way too long, and then they'd have to worry about the logistics of getting it from overseas. So yeah, not just 3D printing. Jimmy, hello from NASA. That's insane. Thank you so much. That's cool. Can you comment on tolerance versus clearance? Yes, I absolutely can. So, I unfortunately conflated the two terms early on before I properly clarified them. So my first gauge I called a clearance and tolerance gauge. Not really the same thing. So with the the gauges I make now, they're really meant to be like clearance gauges. So what I do is there's gaps set to certain amounts in the 3D model, and the idea is to figure out what your printer's actually capable of reproducing reasonably, so that you can design those gaps into your model, into your 3D model. The thing with tolerances is that's more of a like a go and no-go specification thing. So although you might have a design which says okay, it must be designed with plus or minus 0.2 millimeter tolerances, it's really hard to determine what the machine actually is capable, what tolerances the machine is capable of holding. So that's why I use the clearance gauge to figure out what gaps work, and then you can kind of factor that into what tolerance your parts will be. Because, for example, if you have 0.1 millimeter gaps that are fusing, then I would say your machine can't hold 0.1 millimeter plus or minus tolerances. But if your machine has 0.3 millimeter gaps that aren't fusing, I'd say, well, okay, you're pretty safe saying that your machine can hold plus or minus 0.2 millimeter tolerances. That's how I view it. There's probably a very non-scientific way to view it. But with these machines particularly, the clearances you get and can achieve and the tolerances you can get are very specific on the model, the filament you're using, the slicing settings, the angles, the orientation. So it's all you get an idea and then you take it with a grain of salt. I usually err on the side of caution. So for example, gaps, although my machines can hold 0.15 millimeter gaps, I usually design them as 0.3 just because I want to make sure they're always loose. Anyway, that's how I view it. God, you guys are from every country. It's crazy. Hello from Argentina, Ivara. Thank you so much for joining. Edwin, thank you so much. You got me hooked on 3D printing, just giving good advice. Thanks. I try to give honest advice. I don't advise anything I wouldn't do myself. Because at the end of the day, this is really started with me just showing what I was doing and what I like to do. And I will continue to do that. I think I might be missing something, but I'm just going to look. Bubba Franks, thanks. Keep on kicking ass. Most certainly will. Just scrolling up in the chat. Sorry, I do miss things. It's really hard. I try to talk to the camera to be more personable, but then the chat's over here. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people lamenting the fact that we now pay tax on imports. Australian government like, oh, you know, we're not competitive with overseas markets. How are we going to fix that? I know, we'll tax everyone to use overseas markets. That'll make people want to use the local markets. Like, no, you just make more money from us and we don't like you. All right, I might run you guys through some of the synth stuff. So I've been doing music on the channel like since forever. I've been making electronic music for a very long time. For a very long time, it was all VSTs, which are virtual instruments. They're built into the software, and they work great. Like, no question. You use the tools you can, and a lot of modern music's built with just VSTs. Absolutely. But over time, I started to get into a genre called synthwave, which is like a new take on 80s style instruments and music progressions. And a lot of the really good synthwave artists use analog gear. And I was watching this video by deadmau5, and he's showing off his wall of modular analog synthesizers. And what that means, what analog means, is like it uses circuitry to produce the waveforms, and then they're modified by filters and things. It's all controlled by like capacitors and transistors and things. And the thing about analog versus digital, which I wish I never knew because then I wouldn't have been obsessed with it, but I'm going to spoil it for you guys as well. Digital is always stepped in some way. So it's very hard to notice, but for example with filter cutoffs, that's where a sound is like very bright or very dulled. There will be steps. It's not perfectly linear when it's digital. I mean, it's really good now, but sometimes, depending on the VST you're using, you can kind of hear the steps. It's not as smooth as you'd like. With analog, it's like there's no steps. It's like perfectly whatever, because it's like you're sweeping analog. You're sweeping like a variable resistor, which doesn't have steps. It's just variable from one number to another number. And I was like, okay, fine. I gotta get something like this. So I started with the Behringer stuff. For example, which is really affordable. So these are synths from like the, I'm sorry, there was like a bug. These are like synths from the 80s and even 70s that have been way out of production for a long time. So they're really expensive to find. They're usually broken. So Behringer is a company that started like reproducing them. So like, for example, this one, the Pro 1 is a take on like a classic synth, the Pro 1, spelled 1. And it's monophonic. So, no, sorry, kind of. It's got one voice, two oscillators. So that means you can have two different waveforms and you can modify them, but it only plays one note at a time. Technically, this one can kind of drone one of the notes, but that sounds crap and not many people do that. But the thing about this is there's no presets. There's no like designed sounds. It's everything is up to you and you can't really save anything. So what I found really fun with the analog stuff is it's almost meditative. So I'll play like this has an arpeggiator in it. So what that means is it will play like a sequence of notes again and again and again. And then you just run through it, you modify sounds, and it's just really relaxing for me. Really, really is. So yeah, this one will do different waveforms. This has sawtooth, which is like a ramp, and then it drops down. It has square, which is up and down. You can change the pulse width of the square, so it changes like if it's 50-50 or if it squishes it to one side or the other. This also has triangle, which is like a nice glassy kind of soft sound. It's really hard to describe. It doesn't do sine, which is like a really soft, rounded sound. And it kind of started from there. And then I kept looking and looking, and I started looking at the old stuff. So that's why this wall here has a lot more. So the 2600 is a reproduction from Behringer from the Korg 2600. That's like really, really like complicated, but just like it's really interesting. It's semi-modular. And you can just do all sorts of crazy sounds with it. Like, you can make the R2-D2 sound with it. I think that the original Korg 2600 is what they used to make the R2-D2 sounds. The JP8080 is a virtual analog, which means it's not actually analog, it's actually digital, but it's really early analog modeling. And the reason I got that is because most tracks you hear, most trance and like early dance tracks you hear from like the 80s, Sorry, what am I talking about? Early 2000s, because this is late 90s, 2000s, used this. And there's a song, which everyone knows, called Sandstorm, Darude Sandstorm. And it has like a sort of pad sound in it, which is like the backing of the intro. Not the main lead sound, like the backing, the sort of pad sound. There's a preset on the 8080 called Sandstorm, and it's that sound. So it's like, that's how imaginative these artists were. So yeah, to clarify, the digital analog stuff didn't come around till like the early 2000s. And then the other stuff is just interesting. It's so much to go into, but it's just really cool to learn about. And then recently, I'll leave it here, but recently I got this, which is a DX7, and this is completely different. This is actually FM synthesis, which is frequency modulation. And if you think about, I just described the waveforms that you cut away from them, like you subtract from the waveforms with the analog stuff. Frequency modulation is where you add waveforms together. So the DX7 has several like sine waves that are created, and it adds these sine waves together using operators, which are very complicated algorithms, sort of to make interesting sounds. And the thing about FM synthesis is that you can create almost any sound with it, but it's really hard to learn how to program. And that's my next mission, is to learn how to program the DX7 properly. One day I'll like do a proper live demo. Enrico's saying get like do a 3D printed DIY synth project. There's a guy, I think he's in Japan, who has a channel where he makes DIY synth modules, and they're like the rack style ones. So that's like next level ridiculous, where each module does a different thing. And he uses Arduinos and does them on the cheap. It's really cool. I can't remember his name, fortunately. But yeah, just search like DIY Arduino synth module. And you'll probably find him. Oh yeah, okay. I have to talk about one more. One like my favorite one I've got, and it's a bit of a boast. I'm sorry. It's not old as such, but this thing, right? So, okay. So this is the Mega FM. It's made recently, but it uses FM synthesis chips from the Sega Mega Drive, which is like, yeah, pretty old. And it's done by this French guy. I can't remember his... That's his logo. I can't remember the brand name. Twisted Electrons. There you go. Twisted Electrons make this. Uses real vintage FM chips. 2 of them. And each has 4 operators. And the thing that's different about this to the DX7 is you have direct access to all the ADSRs of the operators, which is really unusual for FM synthesis because it's really easy to get awful sounds with it. But I've learnt to use this just by playing with it and fiddling with it, and it's got this gorgeous gritty sound to it. So in my latest tracks on the channel, like for the bird ones, for example, if you hear these sort of plucky, lo-fi, interesting sounds, that's this bad boy. Really, really cool. Really high noise floor, really crunchy. Just, you can't get that with digital VSTs. You can't. And I wish I didn't discover it because now I'm obsessed with really expensive gear because these things aren't cheap. But they're tons of fun. All right, that's enough about the synths. Print Nest, thank you so much. What do you think is the future of home 3D printing? What way will it go according to you? Is the Voron the way to print faster, or SLS to make it more precise? Okay, what's my wish? So, the thing about SLS is it's a bit of a misconception that it's like a really good technology. It's not really. It's decent. And the thing that's powerful about SLS is you don't need support material, and you can throw heaps of prints into like a 3D nest and print the whole vat at once. And the parts are quite strong. They're sintered nylon usually. But the thing about SLS is that to sinter the nylon, they heat it up to sort of just below the sintering, the melting point, and that damages it. It sort of becomes fluffy. So what you have to do is you have to, when you take the parts out, you can't reuse all the powder that hasn't been sintered. There's like a certain mix you can get away with. Too much and the parts are really soft and fluffy and porous, and brand new powder, you'll get the best result. So for a home use, I can't see SLS ever becoming usable because A, it's very messy, and B, it's not really suitable to just print one-off parts. What I can see becoming a thing is resin jetting. So this is still protected by a huge amount of patents, but essentially imagine an inkjet head, but instead of jetting out ink, it jets out UV cured resin, little tiny drops. And then it prints that layer, and then a UV light sweeps across and cures it instantly. And then it comes around, jets out another layer, comes back, sweeps across. And the thing about this technology is you can have a support resin and a print resin, or you can have multi-colors of print resin and a support resin, or multi-properties. And it just has to come out of these inkjet heads, these like stainless steel print nozzles. So like Objet was the big one for that, and then I think I don't know if Stratasys or 3D Systems bought them. I can't remember. But basically, once that's no longer viable for industry, we're going to have little machines like this big that have cartridges, which will be proprietary because whatever. That they might even be single use. Who knows? That resin jet, really high detail models with support material that you just break away, or maybe it's even water soluble and safe to dissolve away in water, and you'll get parts. That's the, I think in my opinion, like the true future of home 3D printing, because the benefit is you don't come in contact with any uncured resin. It's instantly cured by the UV light. It's easy to use because there's no worry about, oh, does it need support material or not? It'll just put support material in by default, and you have no choice because it's easy to remove. You don't worry too much. And in terms of geometric limitations, it doesn't really have them either because, again, if you have like a complicated lattice, it'll just build support material in like a jelly around it that you just get rid of. That's, in my opinion, the future. We'll probably see that in 5 years, unfortunately, or so. I don't think any closer because just those intellectual property protections are going to be in place, because it is still so valuable in industry to do that sort of thing. They don't really care about the hobby market. Someone else will have to step in and do it. Cool. Yeah, so Roy's exactly right. Objects are currently patented, which is why we're not going to see it anytime soon. Stu Backer, thanks so much for the dono. G'day from Texas. Awesome. Hope you're doing well. What have I missed? I think that's about it. Awesome. Shivel, for your own needs, did I ever get around to publishing the slicer profile for the Sidewinder X2? No, I didn't. Sorry. I did a decent one, but I recently destroyed my Sidewinder 2 X2. So what happened is I was trying to print the bird puzzle, and what I do with my Sidewinders is I put a larger nozzle on them. Oh, now this bird sitting on the floor. So I put a 0.8 millimeter nozzle on the Sidewinder, and I left it to print with a low infill for this middle bit. And the problem with low infill with large nozzles is that it warps, and I came back to the part, it had missed steps, and it had like snapped the BL Touch sensor off, tore the silicon sock off, and like damaged the hot ends. Because obviously 0.8 millimeter extrusion widths are like really strong. So I got to fix that. But I did have a decent one, so yeah, so I'll get around to it as soon as I can. But the X1 profiles should work okay as well. It's just I was trying to make it good for large nozzles, and it just didn't work too well for me. Whew. Need some more water. Cool. Yeah, so I can't believe it's the end of 2021. I can't believe it's not 2020 anymore. Moving forwards, I'm really interested to hear what you guys would like to see. I am thinking of taking a very large step back from most reviews. And that's for a few reasons. One is that companies are really struggling to get machines out now anyway because of parts shortages, supply chain issues, and all that sort of thing. And the market's kind of, going down quite a bit for 3D printing. But two, I am just so done with reviewing a product that the review is almost no longer worth anything by the time I publish it because they've changed things, or their quality control is so iffy that things might be better for other people than me, or I might bet my experience might be great, but then they buy a machine and it's not good. I've just really had enough of that. It's happened over the years quite a few times, but reviews take a huge amount of time. They take weeks of effort on and off. Then filming is like a good solid 3 days. So I film, I edit, I do the B-roll. I do it all myself. I don't have anyone else to do that for me. And then the payoff is I get a printer, which is good, but I don't really need 3D printers, so I donate them generally. But I don't want to donate a printer that's not usable, which unfortunately is often the case for a lot of these reviews. There's this underwhelming generally. And it puts me in a difficult position because I want to help inform people of good purchases. But at the same time, there's no point doing it if the review's irrelevant. So I think I might put in a policy in place where the machine has to be out for a certain period of time. No more Kickstarter reviews. Forget that. I don't care anymore about how much they push it. They're just free advertising for the company, and they're basically worthless because what you'll get will be completely different. And it basically helps the companies learn how to make their products better when they should be better in the first place. And I've spoke about this many times. I've made a whole video about the biggest the sins in 3D printing. Right? They haven't gone away. They're still being committed daily. But yeah, I just really want to help empower creativity through other ways, moving forwards. So whether that's more tutorials or more projects that you guys can try, or tips and tricks, or even other technologies as well. because it's not all about 3D printing. There's other things you can use in your making journey to do all sorts of cool things, like your laser cutting, or even CNC stuff. Like desktop CNCs are becoming more popular, and you can do some stuff on those that you really can't do with 3D printing. And I've been wanting to showcase that for so long, but I just haven't been able to, because again, you get caught up in these reviews, and I commit to them, and then they like show up, they show up like all at once, and yeah, it's really hard. I don't want to complain about it because it's really like it's really cool to be able to do it, but also some of these companies just don't learn. They just do not learn. And yeah, sorry, Liam, thanks for the donation. Going back to the review stuff, the Prusa XL I talked about at the start of the stream. I probably won't be reviewing it because, while it's incredible, I think it's going to be fairly shared and covered by some other really good YouTubers, and it's at that point where it's so fancy that I think it's going to be very prosumer and niche, which will mean it'll be very popular, but not as popular as the Prusa Mark III, for example, just because it's just at that price point where it can do all sorts of interesting things, but not everyone needs that, and therefore they're not going to spring for that quite high price point to get it. And Omar, thanks so much. First of all, thanks for your knowledge you provide. Any advice for fine-tuning a Mark III's? Fine-tuning a Mark III's? Well, I mean, obviously start with the default profiles and see how it looks. I wouldn't expect the printer to come with incorrect calibration from factory, but you might be having to fine-tune your first layer because it might be too close or too far, and that's your baby stepping, for your Z height. You might have to fine-tune your temperatures because your filament might be printing too hot or too cold. So like lots of little calibration cubes, like Chep's cubes, fantastic for example. Stringing tests to see if your attraction settings are decent, and you're not getting any stringing. But in terms of like other calibration, I don't think you'll need to do too much. But yeah, I'd start with some calibration cubes and stringing tests and go from there to fine-tune your first layer and your printing temperatures. And yeah, that should get you going pretty good. Morton's asking, do I use Fusion 360 or what do I use? Greetings from Denmark. Yeah, the Fusion 360 issue is really difficult. I use Fusion 360 and I pay for it every year. I am not sponsored by Fusion. I'm not sponsored by Autodesk. It's good software if you run a business that can pay for it because it's the cheapest option in its class. I would use SolidWorks if they made an affordable option, but they don't. To get a SolidWorks premium license in Australia, it's like $15,000 plus maintenance fees because it's out of date the next year. That's not an overstatement. That's how expensive SolidWorks is. So with me paying $500 or so a year for Fusion, it makes financial sense. The problem with Fusion is, I mean, this is always Autodesk's plan, but they've really cut back on the free plan. So I can't see it being valuable for me to keep promoting it with 3D printing 101s and tutorials, because it's this cloud system where they sort of take your ideas and then they're going to hold them to ransom from you unless you pay them. And I'm not okay with that at all. So yes, I use Fusion 360. Personally, I think it's great software for the price. But if you're a hobbyist and you're using the free stuff, they're just going to keep squeezing it. And they already have, which means I struggle to show it now on the channel. And I don't really want to promote it because, yeah, this channel's big. Like, this is a celebration for 800,000 subscribers. And that's a lot of people that will be influenced by what I show. And I don't want to be like, hey, yeah, you know, Fusion 360 is free. It's really good to learn 3D modeling. When it's not really free anymore. I mean, there was always a timestamp on it. But I'd much rather you, if you're able to, pick up something that is genuinely free. Like FreeCAD or Blender. They just aren't at the level that I need for my day-to-day modeling. Maybe one day. Maybe one day I'll go really give it a good crack, but for now, I use Fusion 360, but I'm not saying you have to. And Teresa's asking about Blender. Yes, absolutely. The new Blender is fantastic. But for the parametric stuff I do, like this bird feeder thing. I think it took me an hour or so to do in Fusion. And, like, time is money. Like, it's worth me to use Fusion to do this than relearn Blender to do stuff like this. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's just not, for me at least, viable. Orbisnork's saying that SolidWorks have a $99 a year maker plan. Okay, I do remember them talking about it. I didn't look into it since. I don't know if it came to Australia or not, but okay, I will look into it. $99 a year for a maker is very viable as long as they haven't cut it back to, like, useless software. But I'll definitely check it out. Jake, thanks so much. What's the weather in Sydney? Been pouring, in Melbourne on and off. Weather's been crap. So, like, we've been having so much rain, and then we had these, like, super hot days. So I was doing some garden work, and it was, like, raining sweat, basically. It was so humid that it was dribbling hot water onto me and, like, just getting me, like, sweaty from just rain. It was just horrendous. That's the summer we've got. We're having a wet summer. So not only do we have, like, everything was on fire 2 years ago, but now we're having an incredibly wet summer where we have floods. We have floods in New South Wales. Entire towns are cut off because of flooding. That just, you know, it's just insane. Thanks so much, ET, for the dono. Really appreciate all your tutorials and fun experiment videos. Love to see me DIY CNCs. I originally started with CNCs. So before 3D printing was even viable, you could buy CNC kits. And I started with one from a company called Lumen Labs. Don't bother looking them up. They were terrible and they almost scammed me. But it was the only affordable CNC kit I could get at the time. And it was terrible. It had so much flex in it because a proper CNC is really rigid. This thing wasn't. It was so flexible. And I had to threaten like a credit card chargeback for them to send it to me because they were just taking so long. But yeah, I learned how to use how G-code worked. I learned how CAM software worked. So like, you think about slicing for 3D printers, CAM is like doing it for the CNC machines, and it's much more hands-on. You have much more control over like how it does it, how it faces stuff, how it pockets things, what order it does, what tools it uses. It's a lot more complicated, but if you understand it, it's very powerful. And yeah, so CNC stuff's really cool. I've got some friends now with proper industrial level CNCs, so like machining centers, which if you think, you know, imagine like a massive enclosure with the machine in it, and it's like got coolant blasting at the part and it goes everywhere, but because it's enclosed, it's like, it's totally fine. Machining centers are really, really, really good, and you can do some crazy stuff with proper high power tooling. So I really want to go visit, you know, now I can, and document that sort of thing. But there's also CNC routers. So you've got machines that cut blocks of metal, but then you've got machines that cut like sheets of things. And you can get like full sheet CNC routers that cut out like patterns from thick plywood, for example, to make furniture or all sorts of crazy things really quickly. It's really fast. And that's another cool technology that's distinctly different from the other sort of CNC stuff that most people show on YouTube. So I also want to document that too. It's in the list. Like, I want to document CNC routing, CNC machining, plasma cutting, proper laser cutting, and 4G stuff. So I want to go to a sand casting company and show how powerful that is as well. And I really want to do like a PLA blank, and then take it to a sand casting company, and then get that made into metal using sand casting. It's one of the most ancient but still used today methods of creating metal parts. It's really cool, really powerful technology. Oh, throat sore from talking so much. I haven't done this for a while. Ivan, is there a rep wrap for CNC? There is a few. I'm sure people in the chat will know what they're called, but there is a few open source CNC designs. Absolutely. They've been around for a long time. Some of them use like skateboard bearings on steel like pipes and stuff like that. There's heaps. Absolutely. Liam, thank you so much. I just finished a 3D printed RC Landy by 3D Sets. Okay, I'll have to check that out. Is that a pair of headphones because the Hedamame ones are. The Hedamame stuff's pretty cool. They still are a really small company, but after my video, you guys have swamped them with like interest, and they can't keep up with orders because of supply chain issues. So they're like, I featured them in the recent Christmas gift suggestion video, and he's like, thank you so much, but we can't ship till after Christmas. I'm like, oh, fair enough. So yeah, it's really cool. Like, they're a really good company doing something that I really do respect, which is like trying to make a sustainable product around good quality components. So like, I do really look forward to seeing where Hedamame goes. But I'll check out 3D Landy as well. Yeah, the shirts from JJ's here in Australia. It's getting to the weather now where like you need a loose fitting shirt because it's getting so humid. I usually just wear black, but I can't. I need something a little bit more fruity and loose for this sort of weather. Oh, Landy is a Land Rover RC truck. Cool. All right. Thank you. Sweet. So in terms of new projects, I do have a few. There's the Burb one, so I want to see if they can use tools. By tools, I mean pick up sticks and poke them through holes. I really want to see if that can happen because that's really interesting to me in terms of bird behavior. And that would be, I think, quite valuable globally as well to see if they can use tools, because it's changing now, but people used to think animals can't use tools. They're like, oh, maybe like, chimps can, etc. But like, birds do use tools. It's been documented several times now. So I want to try documenting my birds doing it. And it's going to be, I don't know if they can do it. It's going to be a push, but I'm going to see if they can do it. But another video I wanted to do for a really long time is talking about being left-handed, which is like, okay, well, who cares, right? So I'm left-handed, and it is what it is. I don't really think about it too much. But when you're left-handed and you make things, there's actually some situations that can be really dangerous. And I haven't seen anyone discuss it anywhere. And yeah, like there's only a small percentage of people who are left-handed, but I know some of you in this chat will be left-handed and make stuff. So for example, angle grinders, and that's going to be the main focus of the video. If you use them as a right-handed person, using them properly, the blade spins away from you. So it kicks like sparks at you. You have the guard to stop it. But if it binds and catches, it flings the grinder away from you. If you're using this swapped as a left-handed person, like you mirror it, right? The blade spins towards you. So for years, I was using an angle grinder wrong, as in I was using it how a right-handed person has the right to use it. But if it bit into the material and kicked back, it would have kicked back into me. So I used to develop all these different ways of doing it, like cut halfway into the material, go around the other side, cut halfway into the material, that sort of thing. I don't see anyone discuss it because the guards can be swapped to either side. And it's not just angle grinders, there's heaps of other tools that are just, if you use them left-handed, they're inherently dangerous. And I really want to make a video talking about it and demonstrating it. So I went to the tip and I got a angle grinder, and I'm going to do some kickback tests. So I'm going to have it on on a rig that falls down on something, and it's set up in different ways, and they're going to see just how it reacts when it actually binds, because kickback is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I was cutting hardened steel rod once, and this is case hardened, so the outside's really hard, and then the inside's soft as butter. And case hardened's good because it doesn't shatter when it gets impact, so it's good for the robot weapon shafts. And it's like really hard to cut, right? And then it goes through really quickly, and then hits the other side of the hardened outside, and then binds. And it bound up quickly with the unexpected, and it twisted it in my hand, and it turned the disc into like a Pac-Man. It like ripped out of my hand because it suddenly gripped just as it got through that last bit of hardened layer. That's absolutely one of the most terrifying things that ever happened to me. And that was like, okay, I hate this tool. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I didn't know that I was like using it inherently in a dangered way. I didn't know. There wasn't any education about it. So, Tom, apparently they make left-handed digital calipers. That's amazing. Yes, because calipers, you can't read them properly if you're left-handed. It's upside down. Rulers are generally the wrong way. The numbers face the wrong way. There's so many things. Scissors, right? You know those like pair of scissors that are bright orange? If you use them with your left hand, the molding is designed in such a way that it's comfortable with the right hand, but if you use them left hand, it digs into like a nerve point in your thumb, and I used to get spasms in primary school from my hand, and it would clench up because the school just had heaps of these stupid scissors, and I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I'm like, why can't I use these scissors? And the blades splay apart. So when you use them properly with the right hand, with the correct hand, the blades push together and you can cut properly. When you use them with the wrong hand, the blades push apart and it like doesn't cut well. So you can buy left-handed scissors. Like, that's pretty well established because that's a well-established issue. But again, you need to be educated to know it exists. Yeah, 3D Printing Professor, they do make left-handed angle grinders, but they're rare. Absolutely. So a couple of my friends a few years ago teamed up together to get me a vertical grinder, not an angle grinder. And this is basically something that grinds, you hold it like that, and it grinds like that. And it's got like a smaller disc, but it's just, if you're doing cut-off stuff, it's I think Milwaukee make it, it's cordless, and it's got little discs in it, and it's just changed my life. It's just, like, it's still designed with a bit of bias towards right-handed use, but like, it's vertical, so it doesn't matter which hand you're using it, it still will cut and pull away from you, and therefore if it happens to kick back, it pulls away from you. So yeah, that's going to be a topic that I'm pretty passionate about and I'm going to cover in the future too. Well, what my grade 1 teacher forced me to use scissors right-handed, yeah. It's sort of theorized that my grandmother was left-handed, but they forced her to use her right hand, and then she sort of became ambidextrous. But I think it's because like they used to literally force you to use your right hand to write. My writing's terrible because like you can't see it; it just instantly gets smudged underneath your hand. "3D print left-hand attachments, yeah. So I posted like this cursed image of a grinder on Twitter, and I was like, what's wrong with this grinder? A lot of people commented on it. That was a grinder I manipulated to be left-handed in design. So the switch was like manipulated to be on the side that a left hand would be able to push it, but it's still not going to spin the right direction, is it? Because you can't change that. They're AC motors, and the gears have a bias in the teeth. So you can't change that. Okay, that's something I'll leave it there, but that's something I'm going to do in future. And I hope you find it interesting because it's design bias. So it's when you design something with your personal biases, but it might not be suitable to other people. It's a problem. It's industry wide as a problem. Not just for lefty righty stuff, like skin color, age. I think it's a really good example of voice recognition, and they shipped it to another country and it wouldn't work because the dialect was different, and they hadn't even tested it. Like, our voice recognition software will work for them, and it just didn't work at all because they just assumed, that's design bias. "3D Printing Professor, what's fascinating about the whole left-handed thing is it came about by selective breeding." Yeah, there's a really interesting video, I think it's PBS Eons or something, who talked about the evolution of left-handedness, and they can tell who was left-handed in Neolithic times because of the way they did the spray painting of their hands. They can tell which hand they favored because of which one they left, and it was still like a lower percentage back then, which is interesting, but really fascinating stuff. "Sarah, if you can stream with your amazing Aussie internet," yes, I can. We actually have the proper NBN. It's not amazing; it sometimes drops out, but we have fiber to the premises, and it's a large reason we ended up moving here is because we could get it. Most places in Australia still have really crap internet, but we could technically get gigabit, but we don't need it. This is like 100 symmetrical, seems to be perfectly fine. Whew. What's the time? 10:30. 1.5 hours isn't too bad. Over Christmas, it's probably gonna be pretty quiet. I'm not exactly sure what else is going to be happening. I don't have any more reviews pinned. I do really want to test the burbs. I am doing so with the clearance castle, I'm doing a companion video about calibrating your printer to go with it. And also going to do a video, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, about logistics and microfactories. Because with this file, some of you guys printed it by the time I'd like woken up the next day in other countries, which is just insane. So like within 5 hours, a physical object created from a digital blueprint had been created in several countries around the world after its release. That's pretty crazy if you think about it. And I think it deserves some discussion, because it could be used for stuff that isn't just, you know, a calibration test. It could be used for really interesting, really important products and developments, like we saw with the face shields, for example. You know, that rush to get things out there in certain areas of the world quickly. It's ready to bring Professor, no worries. Hope you had a good day. Hope you have a safe trip home. Pretty Nest is asking about the Voron. I mentioned it before early in the stream, but I think it's really cool. I think the whole Voron concept and making it printed from scratch, and there's a whole community around it, is fantastic. But there's nothing much I can add beyond some of the other channels who have covered it. So I'm not planning to make one just because it's a huge time investment. But yeah, like, you know, like Tom and that have done some really good stuff on their printers. And I really think it's a cool machine, but I probably won't be making one myself. Or a cool range of machines, because there's different types. Hans, what are my thoughts on YouTube hiding the dislike counter? So stupid. So stupid. So the biggest problem I see with the dislike counter being hidden, not only is it just like pathetic, because the creators can still see it. So, you know, it's not protecting our mental health, because we still see negative comments, we still see negative downvotes and that. Like, you know, I like to say, like, oh, it's like water off a duck's back. It's not. After a while, it does get to you if you get like a large amount of negative feedback. So hiding them doesn't help the creators. It just helps YouTube, because it means they can push commercial crap that will be downvoted heaps, but you don't see it, right? Like the rewind is a good example. But my biggest issue is tutorials. So there is so many tutorials on YouTube. So when you search for something, like when I'm learning anything, I usually go for a YouTube tutorial. I try to find a tutorial on YouTube for what I'm looking for. And the like to dislike ratio is usually how I gauge if it's worth watching. So if the tutorial says something that I'm trying to learn and the like to dislike ratio is terrible, I'm like, well, it probably doesn't answer it, or it's probably outdated, or it probably is just really bad. You know, sorry to the creators, but like, it's hard to do good tutorials. But if the like to dislike ratio is really good, I used to be like, okay, it's a good tutorial, it's worth watching. With that gone, it's now just like a shot in the dark, basically. And time is money. Like, if you're trying to learn something, you don't want to watch 5 tutorials and find out, oh, well, okay, it worked like 5 years ago, but the guy keeps updating the title to be like latest version, and it's not true, but he gets clicks, so it doesn't matter. I don't get it. Like, YouTube does not listen to its creators at all. It doesn't care. It's all about itself, which is why I have like my side stuff, like the Makers Muse website, for example. It's all built on Podia, which is a website for selling digital assets. And it's why, like, if you join there, like, you use your email address to sign up, I'll never spam it. But if YouTube decides to kick me to the curb, that's going to be my safety net. I'm going to be like, hey guys, remember me, the Angus on Makers Muse on YouTube? Well, the YouTube channel is no longer there, but I'm still trying to help out, and I want to help you guys. So, like, I just start uploading tutorials to Podia, and, you know, maybe make it like $1 to access every month or something, so I can just keep doing it. That's my plan B, because like, it's very clear that YouTube does not listen to creators. I've scraped through this realm of being PG, but kind of interesting enough to do okay on YouTube. If I was more edgy, I'd probably do better. And if I was like just doing really simple stuff, it probably wouldn't have, like, not doing the interesting wacky projects or the power videos, the channel probably would have stayed quite small. It's really, I got really lucky in terms of finding that edge, because again, Aussies like to swear. I'm very I hold myself back talking like this because I swear a lot in real life because it's just what we do. But YouTube, we used to be okay with that, but now it's like, oh, you can't have swearing. Like, to get monetized for just speaking how you normally speak is pretty devastating, and especially it's like it's not like they changed the rule and then let the previous videos stay the same. They change something and then, you know, retrospectively, change their mind about videos that might have been up for years. So yeah, that's my rant over. They just don't listen to us, basically. We have no power. Unless we make a stink. So unless we kick up a huge stink and it looks like a PR disaster, won't care. Don't care. So yeah, thank you for that question. Uncensored Maker's Muse video when? Maybe on some other channel. If I stream with someone or do something with someone who is okay with swearing, you'll get the Uncensored Maker's Muse. You won't be ready for it. Sweet. Cool. All right. Can we get an F-bomb at 1 million subs? I promise you'll get a massive bomb at 1 million subs. Yeah. All right. Mark my words. 1 mil, you won't see it coming. Do I publish any music? Yes, I do. If I finish a track or I use it on a channel, again, because I do all the music on the backing for the channel videos, it's on my SoundCloud. So just search Maker's Muse SoundCloud. You'll find it. It's not all great. I'm not a professional. I just do it for fun. But it should be able to be downloadable. So if you want to use the music in your own videos, go for it. All I ask is that you just, in your description, say what the music was from and a link back to the SoundCloud. That's it. I don't ever intend to monetize it. It's just for fun. And yeah, absolutely. You can find more there. Kevman, thanks, thanks again. I'll be honest, it was the bird videos that brought you to my attention. Cheers. Yeah. So that was sort of the idea. Doing the project videos, like the wobbly wheel stuff, the weird objects, the birds. It's sort of like what I've got is like this net, right? This big net, and that's like wide appeal, fun stuff. And then occasionally people go into this net and they're like, oh, how did he make this thing? What's 3D printing? And they sort of tumble down. It's more of a funnel. They tumble down. And then maybe some people, like yourself, will think that 3D printing is interesting enough to research more into and then maybe get into it. That's kind of my goal. It's like a catch-all. So I'll do general stuff, and then I'll do really specific stuff, and I like cycle between them. So like I'm okay with the tutorials not getting many hits because they're hyper-specific. That's fine. I'm still passionate about doing it. But the general videos, the fun projects, is where I sort of aim to reach a wider audience. And then maybe some of you guys stick around and then get interested in the hobby, which is cool. Like, that's absolutely my goal, so thank you. Covert lewd. Yeah. Parker Brown, thank you. I volunteer to host an uncensored stream. We can swear and talk about printed pew pew. Oh, you have no idea how bad it is in Australia about that. Just quickly, if no one's really clear, we cannot discuss projectile devices at all, because a couple of years ago, a few years ago now, Australia introduced a law where if you have a digital blueprint of a firearm, it's a jailable offense. So I'm not even talking printed. I'm talking a digital, like an STL. And it's really vague. Like, is that a cosplay thing? Is it the Liberator? All of this rubbish, so I can't talk about it. And I don't know if I'm being too cautious or not, because, you know, Australia has all these stupid laws they can barely enforce, but, yeah. Like, I think the whole space is really innovative, but it is what it is. That's just where I live. Yay! Uncensored Hoonie H6 3D video from 1 mil. The Hoonie, I still have the bits of the Hoonie, but it was so terrible, it never even printed. Like, it never even made it to the printing stage. I just ranted about how crap it was and then tore it apart after the review video. So, it had like a linear rail on it. It had some good bits. It just was thrown together by like a monkey. It never been tested, and the company disappeared off the face of the planet. It's so weird. So unfortunately, I can't re-review the Hoonie. It doesn't exist anymore. Tom, thank you so much. What do you think a very accurate and fast 3D printer would be an interesting test project? Talking about 1 micron or even half a micron resolution. I think the masked SLA stuff could get down to that level eventually. But you might be better off with DLP. So that's where you're going to have a projector with a high pixel count and then converge it down to a smaller area, in which case you can really compress those pixels into smaller accuracy. I think it's probably already exists. I know that DLP is a really good technology for like the dental industry and the jewelry industry because they can get crazy high resolution. So it's not a silly notion. It might already exist, or they're probably down to like at least a couple of micron pixel size. But again, very niche. Not many people need that level of resolution. Don't monkey shame. Alright, I'm sorry. Monkeys can be really clever. Okay, I apologize. Yeah, Wellbot's got Wellbot has a DLP. So yeah, if you have a projector, you can focus it to change the printing area, but increase the printing resolution by doing so. Cool. Well, guys, this has been tons of fun. My voice is all like hoarse now from talking for an hour and a half. I haven't done it for so long. But yeah, I cannot thank you enough for being here, especially after the last 2 years. Like, 2020 was hard. 2021 just, I don't know what happened. It's been one of the roughest years ever. And I hope you're safe. I hope you're doing okay. For where we are, we're finally getting back out into things. But again, new variants all the time. I don't know. We're vaccinated. We're safe. But whatever. Just got to take it one day at a time. And I'm just really looking forward to continue to bring you guys positive, fun, inspirational content. Because like often I'll do projects that I just can't take as far as many of you can. And I'll get like messages months later where people have taken an idea and then pushed it like to ridiculous new levels. And it's so cool to see. Like that just really makes my day. So I hope to bring you more stuff like that. Shivel, yes, I should do more live streams. Thank you. You guys are the great. Like Shivel's been around for so long. Wellbot's been around for so long. You guys supported me for like years and years and years. And I just wish I could catch up in person with you guys. Like, that's my dream, to go to one of these events again and actually like just hang out. Like, go to like the Maker Fairs, go to all these events, then go have a beer, you know, catch up. I'm so keen for that. So hopefully in future. But yeah, till then. Okay, Jake posted something. I don't know where it's gone. Okay, there you go. Okay, so talking about Fusion 360, at least has a free version. Yeah, okay, that's true. So does Onshape. Onshape has a free version as well. It's just about whether or not they're going to take your data for ransom. But thank you guys. You're the best. And I look forward to seeing you again very shortly here on Maker's Muse. And I will make this stream unlisted, but I won't take it down. So if you want to catch up on it, you absolutely can. And yeah, have a fantastic day or evening or night. And I'll see you